today we're really focused on digital health and fintech. So digital health is probably our most mature grouping. We've been working with Mass Challenge up in Boston has a program called, it's called Health Tech now. It used to be called Pulse. We're one of the founding partners or sponsors of that program. We're on our third cohort now. So that's probably our most mature. We're now working on a fintech version of that, which just kicked off in January. So that's sort of an up and coming area for us. That doesn't mean that we won't look at other opportunities. When we do our pitch events, we do it like American Idol. So we do pitch events around the country, and the top 2 winners get to come to DC in the fall and present in sort of like the grand finale. And we try and create themes because it becomes easier for people to focus around. But we'll often see things that are one-offs that we just think are super interesting. Fall detection is an interesting one. We see a lot of stuff there. We saw, just recently, I saw a company that makes inserts for your shoes that can detect diabetic changes, which I thought was interesting. So we do see some things that are in the health space maybe, but not necessarily caregiving or not necessarily the things we're focused on, like social connection. And we'll absolutely look at them if we think it makes sense and it fits into the categories of health, wealth, or self. The good news is health, wealth, and self is a broad swath of pretty much anything that someone could be working on. I think they all will. I think at some point that you're going to see all of these things have a healthcare bent, right? You're seeing, you mentioned Apple, right? So tech company with a watch, now the watch is doing all kinds of things that are connected, that are health oriented. Look at folks like Under Armour, right? Running and apparel, but then they go out and buy Map My Run and you're seeing the influence of health in everything we do today. So yeah, you're gonna see a proliferation there. To me, the challenge for us is that we look across all of these different brands and all these different products, trying to figure out, we're not trying to endorse any one of them. We're trying to just make sure that they all work, right? And we want choice for our members, and sometimes they can't afford an Apple Watch. So what's the alternative that can still provide similar functionality? I think that what's interesting is you think about livable communities, and as you see more communities, planned communities come up, or more advancements in building technology, one of the things I think that's difficult today is if I have to outfit my parents' home by buying 10 different devices and jack them into different rooms, and I got to have a camera here and a sensor there, I'm not going to do it because I am a tech guy, a product guy, right? So for me, if I think it's hard, what is the person that has no idea about tech going to do with it? They're not, right? So I think that's one problem. But as new developments, and especially you're seeing these communities, these 50-plus communities or 55-plus communities being built, they're starting to stitch this stuff into the fabric of the design, right? So how do you have the best technology? I always talk about this. The best technology fades into the background. You don't even know it's there, right? So you think about an Apple Watch. What's the primary use case? It's not measuring your heart rate, right? It's a watch, and then maybe it's my email. But the byproduct is all these things that are just happening in the background that have valuable use cases attached to them. And so I think you're going to see more and more of this, but the technology is going to become less expensive. It's going to become smaller, more integrated, and you're not going to have 15 sensors. You're going to have 1 or 2, right? And we've seen some really interesting stuff up at MIT's Media Lab that has been fascinating, right? There's a company that it looks like a router box, and it creates a mesh network in your home. It interacts with the chemical water composition of your body to know if you're standing, sitting, walking, if you've eaten, if you're breathing, if you've fallen. To me, that technology is brilliant because it can connect to many different devices, but it doesn't require me to buy a bunch of sensors. I plug one box in, and that one box I can configure to talk to my other devices, or maybe I just configure it to say whether I've fallen or not, right? So we are seeing a lot of advancements in the connected device space, the smart device space, and even think about voice. So Alexa and Google Assistant and all these voice things that are happening, and they're integrated with everything now, right? We were playing with we were at CES, we were over in the Kohler space. They actually have an Alexa implementation where you can tell Alexa that you need exactly a cup of water that's 72 degrees, and your faucet will just turn on and exactly your cup comes out at 72 degrees, right? So that to me is where you're going to see value, because it's not just knowing whether I walked into a room or not, or turned my lights on or not, but there's actually utility that these devices, when they're all stitched together. And I do think voice, by the way, is going to be the driver for all of this stuff. Yeah, no, you're right. I think there's a push and a pull, right? So I do think as the devices get smarter, yeah, I mean, think about Nest, right? I mean, Nest is sort of understanding the environment and making changes to the environment. Well, similarly, if I had a watch on that could tell my temperature and maybe it needs to get hotter or colder in the room and it's automatically navigating for me, sure, I think that absolutely happens. The thing we think about a lot is the older part of our segment. So if you think about the 65 plus, you have mobility issues, you have dexterity issues. Maybe I have arthritis and I can't actually physically manipulate whatever I need to manipulate, right? So even if I have a speech impediment, we're now working with a company called VoiceIt that if you have anywhere from a mild to a severe speech impediment, so maybe you have Parkinson's and you can't really speak, so there's technologies we're seeing that will translate what would sound like maybe grunts to somebody into a language that they can then actually control via voice devices. So we look at it sort of two lenses there. You're absolutely right. I think there's proactive capabilities that the devices can talk to other devices and manipulate. And then I think there's going to be issues where, or times where voice will be a really nice way for people to help drive when appropriate. Different devices and utility or use cases throughout the home. And even when you start talking about autonomous vehicles, right? And how do you do that? How do you maneuver from one environment to another environment to maybe a third environment? And the device will clearly, if I had a watch that was connected to all three, it would communicate to all three. But there's always going to be, a need to navigate without a device doing it for you. And that's where I think voice becomes the really the interesting navigational element here. Yeah, there's two real use cases we look at there. One is the social isolation component. We've done a bunch of testing where we put echo dots, and this was maybe a year ago. We put echo dots in folks' homes and gave them very little instruction and just kind of wanted to see what would happen. And it literally was small talk. It was a companion, right? It was interaction for me. But you mentioned the pill medication adherence. We actually work with a company called Pillow. And Pillow is like a little robot. You may have seen it in our booth. It's like a little robot. It's got a friendly face. And Pillow talks to you, and it works on facial recognition to actually dispense your medication, right? And so you can ask Pillow anything. It can converse with you. It does become your little buddy, your little companion. That's, the primary use case is medication dispensing. But maybe I have a question about my medication. Maybe I want to talk to somebody about my medication. Telemedicine can be a component. So I do think there's leveraging voice to have that interaction with additional use cases is really, really powerful.